Have you ever made a decision you immediately regretted? Sold a stock just before it went soaring? Stayed in a relationship that you knew wasn't right? Or maybe you constantly put off healthy habits, even though you know they're good for you in the long run. If so, you're not alone. And guess what? There's a fascinating reason why our brains sometimes seem to conspire against our best interests. It's all about something called prospect theory. Prospect theory is a revolutionary idea in psychology and economics that explains why we don't make choices the way traditional theories once assumed. Turns out, we're not always as coolly rational as we might like to think. See, our brains are wired to be way more sensitive to losses than to gains. Remember those cave-dwelling ancestors we keep talking about? Losing resources could mean starvation and danger, so avoiding loss was all about survival. That instinct is still with us today, even though most of us, thankfully, don't worry about where our next mammoth steak is coming from. This fear of loss, or loss aversion as the researchers call it, means a potential setback stings way worse than an equivalent gain feels good. Think about losing $50 versus finding $50. Not the same emotional reaction, is it? This bias shows up in all sorts of situations, but that's not all. We're also drawn to the comfort of certainty, even when a little calculated risk might have a bigger payoff. That's why we might take the sure-thing job offer instead of pursuing that entrepreneurial idea. Or why a guaranteed payout sounds more appealing than playing the lottery, even if the odds of winning big are technically on our side. And here's another weird one. How choices are presented totally changes how we see them. Ever notice how marketers, politicians, even our families and friends try to sway us? Subtly and not so subtly. They play on our biases, highlighting potential losses or gains to make their case. Act now or you'll miss out. Sound familiar? It's all about framing. So what does this mean for your life? Well, prospect theory helps explain why it can be so hard to save money, invest wisely, make good health decisions, and resist those tempting short-term rewards even when they hurt our long-term goals. The good news is, awareness is the first step to making better choices. Once you know about loss aversion, about our attraction to certainty, and how easily we're influenced by framing, you can start to spot these little mental tricks your brain is playing. Then instead of reacting on autopilot, you can pause, reframe your thinking, and ask yourself, is this bias taking over? Am I being swayed by the way this choice is presented, rather than the true value? Am I letting the fear of a small loss make me miss out on a potentially bigger win? Understanding prospect theory isn't about becoming emotionless robots. It's about working with our human nature, not against it. Sometimes our biases protect us. That gut feeling of unease can stop us from making a disastrous investment or warn us about a relationship red flag. But other times, our instincts can steer us wrong. By recognizing these patterns, we can start to make deliberate choices that align better with who we want to be and how we want to live our lives. Knowing how our minds work is a superpower when it comes to building financial security, nurturing better relationships, and prioritizing our overall well-being. Want to dive deeper into prospect theory and master the psychology of decision-making? Then check out our book, The Loss Factor: How Prospect Theory Shapes Our Choices. We'll explore everything we've touched on here, plus tons more real-world examples and practical techniques to outsmart your biases and make choices you won't regret. Click the link in the description to learn more.